We would like to call the 2020 JWHA business meeting to order. We welcome all members who have joined us and new friends as well. We're delighted to have you all with us. We would like to begin this evening in remembrance of cherished members of JWHA who have passed away in the last few months. Ken Stilbaugh, Kent Olson, Armand Moss, Billy Young, and this week, Johnny Stevenson. We send our deepest condolences to their family and friends. May 21st, 2020, facing the challenges of the pandemic, the Board of Directors adopted a Memorandum of Understanding addressing voting at the annual business meeting. The JWHA Board recognizes that the COVID-19 pandemic requires extraordinary responses. As a board, one of our responses includes postponing our annual 2020 conference to protect the health and safety of our membership. We recognize that this postponement impacts board vacancies and executive committee terms. To address this impact, the board interprets our bylaws and specifically Article 5, Section 6, that, quote, in person, close quote, may include virtual voting at a virtual conference. The bylaw states, Article 5, Section 6, proxies, absentee, and mail ballots. A member must be present in person to vote at a business meeting of the association. No proxies, absentee votes, or mail ballots shall be allowed. This interpretation of Article 5, Section 6 shall remain in force as long as a pandemic situation precludes meeting at a physical location, empowering the board to hold business meetings at any and all virtual conferences. At this time, we would like to approve the September 26, 2019 business meeting minutes that you were able to download in the lobby. Let's familiarize ourselves now with the voting that will take place. First of all, you can see on your screen the attendees, or the attendees chat room, where you can make motions and seconds as well as comments during our discussion. Afterwards, that will be followed by a vote. So I'll call for the vote. We'll take some time then as you all vote, and then we'll announce the results. Do we have a motion from the floor to accept the September 26, 2019 business meeting minutes? Thank you. Rachel Killebrew. Rachel then has made this motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second from the floor? Thank you. Dan Whitmore has seconded the motion. It has now been moved and seconded that we accept the September 26, 2019 business meeting minutes. Do we have any discussion, including corrections or additions to the minutes? You may type those in at this time. Seeing no discussion, then we will proceed to the vote. Would you look now at the vote and cast your ballot then to accept yes or no for the business meeting minutes? Once again, if you would like to take a look under annual business meeting minutes, you will see a vote there where you have your opportunity then to accept the minutes. Or you may also reject them or abstain. Thank you. That concludes the voting, and the vote has passed. Thank you very much. At this time, we would like to turn the microphone to Dan Whitmore, the Finance Chair of the Board of Directors for the John Whitmore Historical Association.
Every organization needs a financial report, and fortunately we have one for you today. In this time of metamorphosis, the John Whitmore Historical Association needs to review our finances and review them for financial stability. We have several pages that will be represented here, and you may have copied them already. The first sheet is our balance sheet. We keep our records on the cash basis, meaning it's like whatever comes in is recorded as income and what goes out as expenses, and then we record our assets and liabilities on the balance sheet. This first sheet is our balance sheet, and we reflect on it cash and in our checking account of $7,357. We have cash in transit, which is now in a money market account, and that's $17,800. Our investments include two different types of investments. The first we have listed as donor restricted endowments of $148,033. I really like those because that speaks to stability of our organization, and we'd like to pay more attention to that. The other investments, the board has full discretion on how they are to be used, and that amount is $409,434. So our total assets are a little over $500,000, $582,624, and that also represents our net worth. Now we'll take a look at our operating statement, where we compare our revenues and our expenses. For the format on this sheet, it looks like it's a complex sheet, but I'm going to focus on the second. Focus on the second column, the 2019 actual. You'll see that if you want to compare it to the prior year, that'll be the first column, and then we have three columns of budget relationship comparing the actual to the budget. On our income, we have a total of $119,622. I'll speak to the major items on this income statement. The second, third lines represent the annual conference, auction, and registration. The total of those two are $30,700. That represents the money that came in at the conference in Rochester, New York last year. Comparing the expenses to this revenue, we had more expenses than revenue. Our expenses, we'll see on the next sheet, was $40,500. So in comparing the two, we had a net loss last year of $9,700. Our board does not intend to have this type of deficit on an ongoing basis, but we realized last year that we kept our registration fees low in order to encourage attendance at the conference in New York. Then further down are several items reflecting contributions to our organization. It's case sponsorship, contributions, and fundraising. The three of those total $61,300. That is very substantial. but the majority of this came from one anonymous donor, of which we're most appreciative to give us the support and stability in running our operation. Further down in the column, we have membership fees of $11,245. That number represents about 10% of our total income, and our board is considering increasing that. Currently, those of you that are members, and I hope there are many of them here today, are really getting a bargain, because those fees represent about 10% of the total money that comes in. We have 323 members currently. The next item I'd like to highlight is revenue sharing of $3,600. This item is material because it's a new revenue we have, and this is the fee that comes in from mostly universities and colleges to let the professors enable their students to do research using the John Whitmer historical journals. And I'll make a couple references to this journal. So the archives have a great many articles that are used by students, and there is a fee associated with that, and that is the amount of $3,600. The last item represents, that I'll speak to, is the John Whitmer books. We received as revenue last calendar year $12,083. Well, fortunately, that was much more than the expenses of producing those books. We had expenses that you'll see on the next page of $6,696. So for John Whitmer books, we reflect a profit or net gain of $5,000, almost $400. So our total revenue or income on a cash basis for the year, last calendar year, was $119,622. Now we'll look and see how we disperse the funds on that. And we did even come out with the net income, which we will talk about at the end of this page. Again, focus on the second column, which represents the calendar year disbursements or expenses for the year 2019. The first one is the annual conference expense that we referenced before of $40,000, which was more than our revenue. And 3 or 4 lines later, we have the cost of our central office. This is the main line item that we're concerned with as we manage our organization. This includes the operating cost of maintaining an office and the hiring of an executive director, and we are pleased that Cheryl Grantner is our executive director, and the hard work that she does for this conference and keeping our organization going. The next item I'd like to highlight is the expenses of the John Whitmer Journal, and that dollar amount is $9,046. This journal comes out about, exactly twice a year, and the cost to produce that is $9,000. This is one of the best benefits of being a member of our organization. That and the newsletter. The newsletter comes out, I believe it's 4 times a year. It comes out electronically. The last item that I'd like to highlight is one I mentioned earlier, is expenses associated with the John Whitmer books, and that amount is $6,600. And fortunately, that's a substantial amount less than the revenues that we use to sell those books. So our total operating expenses were $118,179. So now to compare our operating expenses with the revenue from the first page, we're showing a net operating gain of $1,452. That really sounds like a good number to us, and we're so fortunate that it's in the positive. But remember There's a substantial amount of that has come from contributions from one contributor. And we really need to broaden the base of our financial support of our organization. So we have a net operating gain of $1,432, but then fortunately we have other items on here. The most material item is the gains from our investment portfolio from the last calendar year. And we call it in two line items. One is unrealized for gains and losses. The reason we call it unrealized is because we have investments in our portfolio that we have not sold. And the market can take that up and down, and at this point, they're not yet realized. And that amount is huge. It's $77,371. That would be a real gain had we sold all the investments at the end of the year. The next item is the earnings, like from dividends of our investments that have come in for $10,028. Those two amounts together of $87,000 is very material, and it helped increase the net worth of our organization. And it was a very good year, but we can't count on the market relating that good every year because we remember we're in the COVID period right now, and a lot of our COVID losses, investment losses during that time period have come back, but we're still a little bit short from where we were at the end of December. Then I have two items on here that reflect items that we collect or disperse that relate to future years. The first, I call it check in transit. It's $17,800, and that represents two fundraising experiences that we tried last year, that we received this amount of money, but we're holding it to disperse in the current year or future years. And that represents our 50th anniversary donation fund and scholarships and dollars to be raised for future years that we had in our Giving Tuesday program. So when you add our income and subtract our expenses, we add our investment gains and losses and these other two items, we increased our equity for the year of $101,880. We also call that net income. The final page that I have for us to review is a little more specific information on our investment portfolio, since this is the area I want to focus to review our financial stability. We talked about how much investments we have, and on our next sheet, you will see in the last column to the right, the year 2019, this sheet of paper represents 4-year history of our investments, and the investments are at the end of December for each of these years. For this last year, at December 31st, we closed with investments of $557,467. That's the same amount that was on our balance sheet. What I wanted to show you is the rate of return that we received for the year. It was a positive 18.5%. Now, we cannot expect that very often, but last year we cheer and I holler and scream as finance chair that we were able to realize that. But it doesn't happen that way every year. In 2018, it was a negative 9.5%. The year before, positive 16%. The year before that, it was a positive 11%. Over this time period, it averaged 7.2% increase of our investment portfolio. That speaks to the financial stability I'd like to highlight for our organization. And our committee is paying a lot of attention to having a growth portfolio and a moderate growth portfolio from our investment portfolio. We would like to receive a rate of return that is 3 to 5% higher than the rate of inflation. What do we do with our investments? These assets don't just sit on the balance sheet and without being used. Our board has a spending policy that we can spend up to 5% of a rolling average of this into our New Year's budget. Our board is a little bit more conservative than the 5% spending rate. Our current intention is to continue at a 4.5% spending rate. Well, what does this mean by using 4.5% of these investments for operating purposes? We would be able to transfer on an annual basis about $25,000 for operating purposes that will help us keep our organization complete. Well, that covers a lot. You can tell I love to talk about finances. In that role, I'm a historian because we're looking at the past to see what really happened. And that is the story. But you may have some questions, and I'll be glad to take some questions now if you have any. Please type them in the attendee chat room if you have them. And I see somebody is typing a good question. Oh, it's a comment from our former chair, finance chair of John Whitmer, Steve Shields from Korea. He says, Dan, great job. And he said, I'm blocked, I guess. No message is going through. Yes, I did get that through. Joe, Steve is one that recommended me for the job I'm in. I don't know whether to thank you, Steve, or not. Are there any questions relating to the finance report? I'm really excited not to hear any because when I had practice sessions with our staff, they really set me up for hard questions. Thank you for membership in the John Whitmer Group. I'm happy to present this report, and I hope we have many more successful years. Turn it back to.
Thank you, Dan. We're so grateful to you and to the Finance Committee. Thank you. We know that you spend much time with many organizations offering your help with financial advice, and we're very grateful for all that you do for JWHA. At this time, we would like to move to approve the 2019 financial report that Dan has just delivered. Do we have a motion from the floor to accept the 2019 financial report? Thank you. Rachel Killebrew has moved to accept the report, and we thank Mark Staker for seconding the motion. It has been moved and seconded that the association should accept the 2019 financial report. Do we have any further discussion? Feel free to type it into the attendee chat room box. All right, having no further discussion then, we will move to the vote. So if you'll take a look at your screen, and you can vote to approve the 2019 financial report. Yes, no, or abstaining. If you'll please vote at this time. I'd like to remind everyone, you'll see that the box that says 2019 financial report, and under that heading, you can see that you can vote yes, no, or abstain. Please feel free to vote now. Thank you. The voting has concluded and the financial report has been accepted. At the April 28, 2020 board meeting, it was approved to retain the current president, Jill Brim, President-elect Kristen Mackay, immediate past president, Rachel Killebrew, until the 2021 election. The nominating committee will offer a 2020 slate of 2 board members to replace those rolling off the board in 2020. And as I mentioned before, we honored them, the excellent leadership of Scott Esplin and Daniel Kelty now, who will be going off of our board, and we thank them for their service. The 2020 nominating committee will remain in place until the 2021 election. Rachel Killebrew, Chair, Joe Geisner, David Howlett, Lachlan Mackay, and Aaron Metcalf. This nominating committee has presented 2 nominees for the association to consider, Myra Elliott and Casey Griffiths. At this time, we may now take nominations from the floor. If you would like to nominate an additional individual to fulfill one of these board positions, would you please type in your response now? Take a look on your screen, see the box that says write in for board nominations if you do have someone you would like to nominate. We'll give you a moment now. Seeing no nominations from the floor, we will proceed. We would definitely like to thank the nominating committee for all of their work. Do I have a motion from the floor to accept then the slate of new board members, Myra Elliott and Casey Griffith? Do we have a motion from the floor to accept them? Thank you. Rachel Killebrew has moved that we accept the slate that has been given to us by the nominating committee. Thank you to Byron Holdeman, who has now offered a second as well. So it has been moved and seconded that the association accept this slate of nominations, Myra Elliott and Casey Griffith, to be our 2 new board of directors serving for 3 years. If you will now, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Do we have any discussion on the slate? Seeing no discussion, we will move forward to the vote at this time. So if you are a member of John Whitmer Historical Association, if you will now vote for 2 individuals then to vacate these positions. Thank you. Thank you. You may vote at this time for 2 directors to fill our vacating positions. Thank you. That concludes the voting. and the slate has been approved. We would like to congratulate Myra and Casey and look forward to working with them and all of our JWHA members. At this time, we'd like to turn the microphone back to Dan Whitmore to discuss our 2 new bylaw changes. Dan?
Our president, Jill Braham, read the memorandum of understanding as to how the board would handle virtual voting during these unusual times. The board would like to put that in as a permanent addition to Article 5 meetings of our bylaws, which would read, virtual attendance. Business meetings may be held electronically through internet or teleconference technology. Virtual attendance rules for these meetings may be as directed by the board. Are there any comments or questions?
We will now proceed then to consider the proposed bylaw change, then virtual attendance rules for these meetings going forward. Do we have a motion from the floor to accept this bylaw change? Thank you. Rachel Killebrew for the motion, and thank you to Scott Esplin for the second. It has now been moved and seconded that the association accept the proposed bylaws change considering virtual attendance. Any discussion at this point? Feel free to type in the attendee chat room if you have a comment or any discussion. Seeing no further discussion, then on the motion, we will proceed to the vote. So if you all at this time could look to the Article 5 meetings bylaw change, and please vote at this time to approve, disapprove, or abstain. Thank you. And if you would like to vote by going to the Article 5's meetings box on your screen in order to approve the bylaw change. Thank you. That concludes the voting, and the bylaw has been approved. Dan, if you would now like to discuss the composition of the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee is included in the bylaws, and we feel that the language is a little restrictive because the chair of the Finance Committee would like to add another member or two for more involvement in the committee. So the recommendation is an increase of 3 words, a minimum of, so that the proposed language would read for the Finance Committee. The committee shall consist of the Finance Committee chair, the treasurer, the executive director, and a minimum of 2 members. And I'd be glad to take any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you, Dan. Seeing no questions then, we will proceed on to the vote to approve the bylaws change concerning the composition of the Finance Committee. Do we have a motion from the floor to accept the change? Thank you. Richard Whittemore has made the motion then to accept the language for the Finance Committee. Do we have a second? Thank you. Aaron Metcalf has seconded the motion. It has now been moved and seconded that the association accept the proposed bylaw change concerning the language of the Finance Committee, adding a minimum of 2 members. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will move on then to the vote. If you will take a look at your screen to approve Article 8, the committees, specifically the Finance Committee, to vote to approve, disapprove, or abstain. Thank you. Again, all members are invited to vote on the language then of the Finance Committee under Article 8 committees, the box on your screen. Thank you. That concludes the voting. The bylaw has been approved. Coming up next then will be the 2020 digital event, Metamorphosis, and we look forward to our excellent speakers who are coming. We would like to thank the 2020 Digital Event Committee, Catherine Hill, Chair, Jill Brim, Joe Geisner, and Rachel Killebrew. Also, we're grateful to all of the individuals who have helped with this digital event, and a list will be coming shortly that you'll be able to see of all those who helped and supported our inaugural digital event. We are totally in their debt. We would like you to stay tuned for a beautiful video highlighting the St. George area, where the 2021 JWHA annual conference will be taking place, and we look forward to seeing all of you in St. George. We're grateful for your time and joining us this evening for the business meeting. Thank you, and now we will have a break until our metamorphosis begins.